The title of this presentation is Thinking Through Text with Technology, and it's a research, it's my PhD research at the Department of English Literature, and it's actually a research on the digital humanities, which is uh, a branch or a field in the humanities in which we look at the relationship that exists between uh, digital technologies and activities of computer scientists and scholarship in the humanities. So my research, this research is taking a look at the rapid transformation that we have faced as scholars in the humanities as a result of digital revolution with the availability of several online repository, corpus, and archives. And scholars in the humanities, especially digital humanists, they have developed more than over 1,500 tools in conjunction with computer scientists to actually uh, come up with how computers can actually help us to do what we do in the humanities. This situation has made a lot of scholars to question the practices, uh, whether we are going to be more like computer scientists or be like social scientists, or we're going to still retain what characterize us as scholars in the humanities. So this research actually used one of those tools, which is Voyant Tools, as an instantiation of digital technologies used to read and interpret larger uh, textual data. And the tool was developed by Geoffrey Rockwell, a philosopher, and Stefan Sinclair, a computer scientist. And the job of the tool is to help scholars in the humanities to engage with tools, with literary works, textbooks, especially those ones that have been digitized, in a creative way to get better interpretation. And one of the things that the developers of the tool did was to come up with a book to explain and also to give a kind of the epistemological framework. In that framework, they describe the tool as hermeneutical tool because the book itself is hermeneutical. But my research is reinterpreting the application of the tool and using the framework of postphenomenology developed by Don Ihde. I see the tool not just as hermeneutical, but also embodiment, and I will explain that within the body of the work. This research is timely and relevant as we know that scholars in the humanities really and they're curious about research in artificial intelligence and computational tools, and they're not just concerned with discriminating or looking at the ethical dimension or trying to critique them, but they try to also appreciate the fact that some of those tools can help us to filter biases, prejudice, and preconception. And so that will take us to Voyant Tool. Part of the things I've prepared for this presentation is to explain what Voyant Tool is all about and to demonstrate the usage. So I will share a video clip I've recorded in that regard so that we can just, so to use Voyant Tools, you will begin by opening your browser and type voyant-tools.org, enter. So it's going to give you the first view of the tool as existing online. And the next thing is to is either you add your corpus here or you open an existing one. By default, Rockwell and Sinclair, who are the developers of this tool, have already placed Shakespeare's play and Austen's novels existing by default. So you can pick this and click on open. It opens that, or you can use the corpus that you have created on your phone. So let's just say we open Voyant Tool again, and comes up as usual with this, and say we're not going to use an existing corpus, so we upload a corpus either we have developed or you have downloaded from an existing data, and it's better that we have that as the text document. We can also accept a Word document, but it has a limited format that is acceptable. So let's say we know the corpus. There is a corpus here of presidential speeches. So we can highlight all of them, and we wait for that to upload. And once it's done, it's going to give us something exactly like this. That's the first framework that we get after uploading our corpus into Voyant Tools. And you can see that. So there's the speeches of US presidents, and as you can see, by default, the first window we get from Voyant as 5 tools. And here we have the Cyrus tool, the reader in the middle, trained, summary tool, and context tools. So I'll explain these tools um, later. That's also the same thing here. And you can always expand any of these tools by clicking on these and the URL for this view, and it gets bigger, and you can always return to where we have the general view. So for the sake of this presentation, I have some corporas I've been working on just to think along with those texts with Voyant Tools as an institution of textual analysis technology. And here we have there's a corpus of the works of modern philosophers, mostly from 17th and 18th century, and another corpus here of about 61 well-known novels written in English language by African authors in the 80s. So just working on that too, to look at interpret those novels with the use of Voyant. And here I have a Great Summa Theology. The treatise written by Thomas Aquinas in the Middle Ages. And we have Shakespeare's play collection is already by default in Voyant Tools. And we have another corpus of the presidential speech, which I used when I was explaining how to upload corpus into the Voyant. And the last is that of Trump campaign speeches 2016. So I'm going to use some of all these corporas to explain the tools that are inside Voyant Tools. So Voyant Tools is made up of several tools, and as you can see, 5 of them are visible now. You can see the rest if we click on this icon. So we have document tools, bubble, Cyrus, context, document terms, reader visualization tools, corpus tools, and we'll just take the important ones that can help us as we look at any text that we can upload to Voyant. Yeah, back to the Shakespeare's corpus. The five tools that are visible here. Let's take them one by one. So let's begin with the summary tool, which shows us the summary of everything in the corpus. As you can see there, there's over 895,737 words. There's a corpus of Shakespeare's play, which it's actually in the Voyant tool itself. So this tool just gives us a simple textual view of this corpus, and the information includes words and documents and even how the words occur within the entire document. So you can see that. And the next tool is that of keyword in context, just simply called context, and popularly known as concordance tool in a way. And here we can search for a particular keyword. Let's say we'll search for love, and then there's corpus, and you can see how it helps to analyze the meaning of the word within various contexts in which Shakespeare used it in this play. And if you adjust the left, you can see more of the words in the context, and you can always increase the context or expand as you like. So this helps us to see the word usage within any literary text, and to be able to see how consistent in some text depends on whether we are analyzing an historical text or just collections of play, and say evolution of idea and the author's way of thinking. So we go to the trend tool, which gives us a line graph, as you can see, depicting the diagram of the kind of a distribution of the most frequently occurring words across that's Shakespeare corpus. So you can see the words shall, Lord, King, Sir, good, in various colors, and you can notice the trend, across the plays. So in the middle of the Voyant tool, we have the reader. And you wonder why do we still have the entire text in this tool? You just need to know the Voyant specifically meant for textual interpretation, so that which can only be achieved through both close and distant reading of any given literary work. That actually explain why Voyant tool has a full text panel at the center, so as to give us flexibility of going from close reading to distant reading and back, and so you can always search within the entire text. And if you notice that if we go back to the corpus, you notice that if you altered something, if you alter anything in the document, and in the frequent changes in the trend, and that which is already been altered, it will to show in the reader section. So the tools are interconnected. They're interconnected, and the readers to makes us to go back and forth. And the word cloud or text cloud function, which is performed by Cyrus 2, gives us a visual representation of text within the corpus. So you can see the frequently occurring words appearing larger in the cloud, and we can always adjust the terms, increase it to actually give room for other terms that occurred frequently within the text. To experiment with other tools is a corpus of some of the works of modern philosophers. I've developed this corpus simply for experimentation with text. This is 25 documents and 1.2 million total words. So we take some tools from there. You can always pick any tool you want to work with from there, from here. So let's start with Belisa. It's an experimental tool that enables the user to have a natural language of exchange, basically in English language, and we can always fetch from the corpus. Let's just select randomly. It has taken something from the corpus, like creating the works from public domain print editions, and Belisa said, "What do you think you're talking about?" And let's just pick another one. After referring to the experience of the individual man, to learn the law of each of these elements, that is, to learn what is natural effect, blah, blah, blah. And the Belisa responds, "What comes to mind when you ask that?" And let's pick another one. He said, "What do you suppose that resemblance means?" Anyway, it's not a perfect conversation. It works for some text. And but you're not alone. If you're chatting with Belisa, there's a bot here, that's asking what the speculation leads to. So it works well in terms of its developmental stage. Next is the phase 2, which shows a repeating sequence of words organized by frequency of repetition or number of words in each repeated phrase. So you can see as within those texts, just look at those phrases. It's just the same words in the same order, often repeated, and check the count and length, and that's important when we're working with some text and we're thinking about the way the author writes and what the author emphasizes. So we have the collocate 2, which shows which terms appear more frequently in proximity to keywords across the entire corpus, and it gives us a count, and so it goes down each words and the collocation within the corpus. Then we have the scattered plot tool, which gives us a graph visualization of our word cluster in a corpus using document similarities, correspondence analysis, as we can see, and correspondence. We have the principal component analysis. Any form of analysis we do, I think this is important, especially for works that we just need those analysis within the body of our works to prove some things and to show how those words we use within the text and and various relationships that exist. So you can always work with that, alter the terms, and use the available control to to make our preferences. Um, Similar to this tool is the stream graph tool. It gives us in a way, it's not playful, but it's a sort of a visual depiction of the change or the frequency of words within the corpus. And we can always try to alter that and focus on some of the words that we think are important and check. So you can experiment with this and check. Um, so it's not doing the work for us. It's just helping us to think, and it's not just for to show something within the body of our work but it influences our interpretation, especially of large um, corpus or text. After collecting the several English novels by African writers in the 80s and 90s, um, as you can see in this corpus of about 5 million words just from some of those novels. Landscape 2 shows me the geography of places mentioned in these novels, and it's so interesting to see that the spatial ontology of those characters goes beyond Africa. As you can notice, the movements across Europe, North America, Asia, and all other places. And it's so interesting. Such an interesting to actually help to visualize text just beyond just the words they mean, but also places that are also mentioned and referred to within the literary work. And you can see there is a corpus here of Thomas Aquinas' Summa Theology, which is a very popular work in the Middle Ages, with about 2 million words in the corpus. And so interesting to see that the work has four parts: the premier part, the premier part, the second part, the secondary, and the tertiary part. And Voyant Tools, especially the bulb line, to helps to visualize the frequency and distribution of time across the corpus, as well as you can use all of that to your textual analysis. And here is the word tree tool, which you can use to see how words are related to one another and how they're used. You can always increase the context. So in relation to things here, you can see these things that, and how they use those things and how they were used within the work. And this is so important to check for linguistic analysis and also the analysis of cultural and other forms of literary text. So if you take a look at the corpus we have here of the American presidents, their speeches, we can use tool like textual arc, which gives us a visualization of terms within those speeches as a corpus, and we can see the weighted century of terms, and there's an arc that we see here that follows the terms based on the documents. So it's such an interactive tool, you can see, and it can, when you're working on any text, you can pause a while to think along with this. And that's textual arc tool. There's mandala tool, is close to that, but mandala shows the kind of relationship in the visual way that exists between terms and documents. So you can see all those precedents here, but we want to look at how they use their terms
and the times that this one used more than the others, and various ways. So you can see trauma, Obama, and kata, telo, and you can always explore this. So that's mandala 2, Tamberry, that's also here, and I'm using that for the same corpus of presidential speeches, and it provides a way of exploring high frequency times and their collocates and the world they exist in proximity to work. So you understand this better when you explore this with some other couples available. And here we have Playful too, anyway, that's for visualization and also in relation to time frequency. You can always give it sounds and you can always make it begin. Let's refresh that. Uh, so you bring the corpus, there's the corpus of Trump 2016 campaign speeches, and I brought imported that into the Voyant Tools and open the visualization, and you can always play for one. You can always let it just continue to give a kind of tick tock. Let's let's just all work and no play. Jack, Doughboy. There's an interesting tool there for us as we think.
So use Voyant Tools.
You will begin
Thank you very much. That's just a presentation on the tool. So that was I'm going to use the tool in this paper to talk about human technology relationship, and the tool is more or less like the case study that I'm using in the research, and to see how we scholars in the humanities actually engage with tools to help us to think along with text and not just to give graphical representations. And I'll continue with the presentation by sharing my slides with you to that will lead us to the discussion. So what we have in the Voyant tool is, as I've shown, are the various tools, and we, it was developed by Rockwell and Sinclair, who are scholars in the humanities and also computer sciences, and that shows the kind of collaboration that can exist between scholars in the humanities, philosophers, historians, and others with computer scientists, in which we're able to show the methods we are using, what we are doing, and the kind of tools that could be developed that will enhance it and that can undo a large quantity of text. And someone asked how do I heard about it too, you can see it's a free tool is available. And though I am part of digital humanities scholarship, so I'm in direct contact also with the developers. One of the developers died last month, and see have a degree, and it's part of my PhD work. So it's not just to report the tool, but I have used a postphenomenological framework, which is a framework in the humanities and by philosophers of technology, basically to interrogate the tool. Within this framework, Don Ihde came up with four relationships that could exist between the human person and the tools that we use. The authority relationship, which focuses upon the technology itself. So, for instance, in relation to the digital humanity, such relationship will exist when, if I'm, for instance, I'm using digital repository. When I'm using digital repository, I'm looking at those repository or the app that has been developed or the corpora or the archive or any AI tool. So in that relationship, the tool is there and I'm also there. So we are two agents, and I'm seeing the tool as an external body. Then the other one, the hermeneutic relationship, is the one that in a situation whereby I'm using the technology as instrument just for interpretation. So in like when Rockwell and Sinclair developed this tool, they see the tool as simply for hermeneutics to help scholars in the humanities to interpret their text, put it there, see various things, have broader insight, compare previous texts, ancient texts, have a quick glance at large volume of text and all those stuff. But I'm also bringing up the other part which Don Ihde introduced, which is embodiment relationship. Embodiment relationship occurs in a situation whereby you and the technology are together in such a way, like the example Don Ihde used in his philosophy was the blind man stick. So the blind man and the stick, the blind man is not seeing the stick as the other, but is using the stick. The stick has become part and parcel. It's like an extension of his visual capability or visual senses. And we have that in telescope too, when you're using telescope, and the same thing hammer in the hand of a carpenter. And then the fourth part of relationship that Don Ihde introduced, which I adopted in my engagement or interrogation of textual analysis tool, in particular Voyant Tool, is background relationship. A situation whereby the tool you're using is existing in the background. And you can see that in the presentation of Professor Chris, that it talks about all these technologies that take our consciousness away, and then we are drowned into that. Now, in the case of Voyant, you will notice that there are three epistemic agents, the user, the computer, and the Voyant tool. And these agents are being, that's the argument, they are existing on their own right. So it's not like just a computer is there, no. It exists, it has its own being, and it has a unique role that is performing within the interpretation, within the context of interpretation. So as a human epistemic agent who is using the Voyant tool on my computer, I'm curious about the nature of my experience of thinking about text along with technology. And it's part of one of the things that the research is actually is exploring and will further explore. Part of the things we try to do is what we exist when we are using the tool, because some of what these tools are doing, like Voyant tool, some of what they're doing can actually be done without using those tools by a programmer. You can use Python, you can use what we call it, you can use R programming language to actually generate some of these analyses, or to even relate better than Valisa with the technology. And one of the things I want to do in this research, which is still going on, is to find out which one would be the best means of interrogating the text. Is it a situation where I'm using a tool already created, or the context in which I have imbibed a lot of programming skills within me, and I'm relating directly with the tools, with the tools using Python or R programming. So if you have any question, I will appreciate, and thank you very much.